Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as Fuck,
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Dianne Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. It's a huge personal experience that has occurred lately. So it's both business and personal, where she went off on a huge trip to Cambodia. And for me, being the curious person that I am, I was absolutely fascinated to watch Liz as she went back into her firing on all cylinders, social entrepreneur mode of absolutely, just bringing to bear this huge, huge program that she delivered in Cambodia. And that was very different to me than the Liz that I was seeing day to day as the very spiritual person that she is and in her business as it stands now. So I wanted to take the opportunity, and I felt like our listeners would be really interested in this. Life before spiritual awakening, then life after spiritual awakening, and incorporating those two sides of our gifts, because we all have 3D gifts in the world, and we also have 5D gifts in the world that we want to bring to bear. So yeah, let's see where this conversation takes us. So Liz, is that seat nice and hot for you?
Oh God, I think it's too hot right now. I don't know, I'm feeling slight pressure here. I'm not the best at articulating myself in the best of the time, but we'll see how we go.
Stop. Well, at least we don't have spotlights on you or anything like that. It's like, and you know me. I'll be as gentle as I can, but I'm also curious.
Well,
I'll be exactly one day. But I would love to start off, because many of our listeners won't know a huge amount about your life before spiritual awakening. So your business, and in particular, if I can tap into Project Gen Z as one of the elements, because I know that you're a serial entrepreneur and have had lots of different businesses. But Project Gen Z, if you can tell us a little bit about that, just to set up the context. And if you can dig into even the Liz's mode of operation as she was running Project Gen Z pre-spiritual awakening.
Oh God, I mean, there's so much I can say here. It's even funny as you're talking, I'm seeing this timeline, that I've been quite obviously taken on for a reason to get to this point. I feel like the Project Gen Z was like the middle ground between my previous business, which was very hustle. I ran a sales business. It was very much from the logical mind, to Project Gen Z that was is an impact business that operated from my drive and passion to make a difference, through to now. So I think it probably got me to the spiritual awakening in a lot of ways. Gen Z is a social impact business that I started in 2015 because I'd been to Cambodia and I just felt this enormous connection with the people of Cambodia, and the history and the culture. And I just always wanted to be able to find a way to make some type of difference to the children that I met there. So I think for anyone that's heard the podcast before, I've spoken about it, the idea for Project Gen Z came definitely from, something not from me. The universe dropped it into my head one night. And at the time, the idea was ridiculous. But the passion and the feeling and the idea came so easily for me. It just kind of all happened. So if I was to explain it in a nutshell, the whole Cambodia side of it is taking over Australian business owners and entrepreneurs, successful people from around the world. I take them over to Cambodia on an annual trip mostly. And we, through that time, basically find out more about Cambodia, the history, the culture, and then we go to work at a place called Sunrise Cambodia, which is my charity partner, and we work with hundreds of disadvantaged children. And the goal behind it is running workshops to teach them really important life and business skills. So when they leave the center, as the majority are orphans, they will have the confidence and the belief in themselves, and they'll have these skills that are going to help them change their life. So the task is large. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. In the past, so I've been running these trips since 2015, and normally I have this big team around me. And over about 6 months, it's a grind. It is not only planning 2 weeks of travel for 25 to 30 people,
Yeah.
speaking about entrepreneurs who are also extremely busy, never get back to emails, trying to book flights, book trips, book accommodation. And there is a lot just even in the travel part of this trip, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But then on the side of that, I personally build 4 days of education that is directed at kids normally about 14 plus, 60% of which don't speak any English. So the
Wow.
task in that, with
Yeah.
25 people added in the mix and 100 kids, is huge. So
And I'm
yeah,
going to add
it's,
one other layer that you haven't mentioned at all here, which is fundraising. So you do
yes.
fundraising even to get all those, to get people over there and to be able to facilitate. And I know, again, probably this year is the year that I paid most attention to it because of how closely we work together. But seeing some of those fundraising events and the energy that goes into creating those as well. So that's a whole other element as well.
I know, yeah, I like to bite off a little bit more than I can chew a lot of time today. Have you noticed?
But it's
Oh.
like for me, I think this is why I was so fascinated that I guess, the Spiritual as Fuck podcast, the channel events that we do, they come so easily to us. I just feel that this flows through us. We have the most amount of fun. And as I was watching you preparing for all of this work, I was actually starting to get anxiety. And
Oh
the
God.
reason that I was on your behalf, because it kept me thinking of what it was like when I used to work in corporate and I had these massive deadlines and a big team and things that had to be done by a certain date. So you've got a go live date. When I look at the podcast, yes, we've got a launch date, but we're usually well in advance of when we will, kick off our show. It's, a bit of editing, some snippets that we do, it's all fairly cruisy. Yes, we do have our own separate businesses that go on alongside this, but the sheer enormity of what you were doing was just blowing my mind. And I was like, okay, is Liz tapping into her spiritual side to get through this? Or has she completely gone back to the old hustle, because you use the word hustle, the kind of hustling Liz that has built numerous businesses in the past? So I'd love to dig
Mhm.
into any of your reflections. And, I don't even know whether you've had time to reflect on this or because it's just been so crazy, so busy. And even when you come back to Australia, there's the whole family and school and everything else you need to go back into. But what reflections have you had, or can you tell me about the difference between this trip and the 7 previous trips that you had? What did you notice about your spiritual practices, your spiritual gifts? Like, were you channeling? Were you seeing things in different ways? Were you operating your workshops in a different way? Were there, past spirits of Cambodia coming through to you? Like, my mind is just bustling with a million questions. So I'll shut up now, but I would love to know what was going on for you and how were you making sense of it all?
Oh, wow. I mean, honestly, it's really only been preparing for this podcast that I've actually sat down and reflected on what the hell actually just happened to me the last few weeks and few months. Because, I've mentioned before, Cambodia has always been a very interesting experience to me
Yeah.
before the spiritual awakening. Dealing with like all of these kids that are coming from trauma, all of the organization, the education, everything's on my shoulders when I go there. And then we're visiting places like the killing fields, the
Yeah.
genocide museum, and you're connecting with this crazy energy of the trauma of the land. So in the past, I've always had things happen. I think I've mentioned before, like I had 3 or 4 trips in a row where things were happening to my eyes. And it was simple things like I lost my contact lens in there, one split, things that have never ever happened anywhere else, but it just happened every time I went to Cambodia. The second thing was always the days that I ran the workshops with the kids, I would get the most severe bad back. Deciding to do the trip again after this big break of COVID. COVID was
Yeah.
the opening of the door spiritually for me, where I was sat and forced to suddenly go through the awakening. I definitely doubted whether I could do this trip. I had a
Ooh.
lot of resistance for a few years, thinking there is no way I can operate and run in what I would be needed to do, I guess,
Yeah.
on a human existence, the to-dos, the
Yeah.
going through the list
Yeah.
of just the doing, I thought might be very hard for me, especially because for the first 2 years of the awakening, I operated really with my head in the clouds, not being able to have
Yes.
the conversations with people, like
Yeah.
forgetting conversations I'd had, like just yeah, obviously the vibration I was operating was really, really high. But what's happened the last year and looking back is that I've started to come back into the center. And this is very interesting for me because I had huge doubts personally. All right. I
Yeah.
can't speak
Yeah.
for anyone else here personally on whether I would be able to do my normal businesses and still
Yeah.
operate with some type of a spiritual aspect to it.
Yeah.
Because I've tried
Yeah.
before and failed.
Yeah. And I totally, Liz, I totally relate to that because for me, and I've spoken about it before, this feeling of being in this void or this transition for the last, almost 3 years now. Um, and it shakes you to your core because, and there's a whole identity that is the you that
Yes.
you knew you could get shit done. And like, I prided myself on that. So, oh my God, there is nothing I couldn't tackle, pre spiritual awakening. And now it's like, yeah, that doubt, that kind of sense of, because I operate in such a different way. And also, I actually don't want to go back to that mode of operation. But what I think, and this is a very personal reflection, what I'm seeing in myself, and this is literally only in the last couple of months,
Mm.
but it's like we do have those it's almost like, yes, whatever you were like in your pure 3D or physical, non-spiritual form, pre-spiritual awakening, and then you go into your spiritual awakening, and it's like we go to the opposite end of the spectrum completely, and we go completely into that higher vibration, or going down the rabbit hole. But it's almost like we need that pendulum swing of one side to the other. And I like the way you said about coming back to center, because I do feel that. And it's almost like, okay, I've experienced the extremes of working in that hustle environment. I've seen the extremes of working in quantum or in the spiritual realms and that higher vibration. And now it's like, how can and like, I view your trip to Cambodia was very much testing you to kind of say, okay, at least start bringing those elements together. So you're, that balance of 3D, 5D, because at the end of the day, there's no point in us all being, totally spiritual up in the clouds. We're here for a reason, and it's
Yeah.
to have a physical experience. It's, so we have to,
Ugh.
in some way, come to a point of being able to balance all of this. And if I think of every one of our guests that we've had on this show, they in some way have had some sort of similar challenge to this as well. It's like there was a life pre-awakening, a life post-awakening, and somewhere along the way. And for some of those, realizing that you don't have to be a totally spiritual entrepreneur with a spiritual business. You can actually be a surgeon. You can be a lawyer. You can be, a federal police agent. You can be lots of these different things and still incorporate spirituality into your work. So
Hmm.
what did it feel like to you, like on the ground? If we look at you actually in Cambodia on the ground, I've got this huge group of, Australian or global entrepreneurs that I'm now responsible for. And I've got all of these kids that I've said I'm coming here to educate. Plus, I've got this charity partner, that is hoping for the same caliber or greater than we've done in previous years. No pressure, no pressure. Like that moment of, you're saying about just you weren't sure about yourself. Did it kick in that you went back into Liz firing all cylinders? What was that moment? Bring us through a little bit of that.
I mean, I guess I do operate at my best when my back's against the wall. I know that about
Yes,
myself. I can
same,
usually
same.
always pull shit out the back.
Yeah.
But 4 weeks before, I'm not going to lie, there was the logical, rational mind was on overdrive at one particular point.
Yeah.
We'd raised only like $10,000. I wanted to raise 50,000, and I couldn't really like get everybody motivated to do it. So I'm putting the pressure on. I have like 5 event plans for different areas of the trip, and I've got them laid out, and I'm going through every minute detail. I'm on Skypes with Cambodia, trying to even understand, between the communication is extremely hard, especially via Zoom. Really trying to just get there. But again, looking back, there were times where, the stress kind of, overtook, but I'd say like 85 to 90% of the time, I just had this really beautiful go with the flow surrender style state that I was working in.
Ooh.
And it was like, Hustler Liz, that's
Yeah.
always worked for me, right? I've been really successful with Hustler Liz.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually miss Hustler Liz in a lot of ways. I'm
Oh,
wanting to find Hustler Liz and bring her back.
yes.
I didn't want to necessarily always operate in the bloody clouds.
Yeah.
So for a year, I've grieved a bit of Hustler Liz as well. So bringing that part of me back, but coming back as more of a conscious hustler with a mission and a spiritual mindset
Yeah.
to operate that spiritual mindset in more of the modern world. Like that's what happened for me. It's like I
Yeah.
took a
Yeah.
bit of her, a bit of what I'd learned the last few years, and somehow got to the point where I could go with the flow. Um, so, I have spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Every day I meditate. I'm still doing readings when I'm at home. I'm still doing the walks to increase my vibration. I'm pretty good with my routines. But I did know that when I landed in Cambodia, it would be very, very, very tough to keep that type of routine when I've got so many other things to focus on. So the only kind of conscious thing that I did when I first landed was I got to the hotel, took off my shoes, asked my family for 10 minutes, and I walked outside and went to an area where I could stand on the land. And
Yes.
I did, I guess, what you call a prayer.
Mm.
Um, I set an intention at that point where I really asked my spirit guides for some help. I'm like, listen, guys,
If I ever needed you, I need you now.
that's it. This is the time that I really need you to step up. And I kind of just asked them to give me the clarity, the guidance, the wisdom, and the focus to get through the trip. And I asked for that blanket of protection, but I asked for clarity. That was kind of the key for me because when I get really busy, as what happens to us all, is that our ego and our rational thinking mind, goes round and round in circles. And when you get to that point, you get unclear. You can't focus. You can't make good
Yes.
decisions. And I just needed to continue to be connected. I knew if I could have that, it would
Yes.
be okay. Yeah, so
Oh,
now looking back, there are these brilliant flashes of memories that have come to me of when, wow, that clarity was really there.
okay. Give us an example. We need to know because these are the kind of things we can talk about this in the abstract, but it's the aha moments or just the merging of worlds really between the hustler Liz and the conscious spiritual Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I just really have to give myself a pat on the back here because
Oh, yes. Join us, folks. Clap in the back for
God,
Liz. I'm all about claps on the back. Yeah, bring it on.
yeah, I don't do it enough, I think, but it's the first time I can go, well done, Liz. You really did the groundwork spiritually. Like you did
Yes.
what you needed to do. You've learned something that's actually had a genuine impact on your life. And the way that this clarity came to me was, firstly, I'm all about intuition. I was so busy. There's no way I thought that I'd be having intuitive hits on that trip. I was constantly like 3 or 4 steps ahead of the plan. What do I need to do? Who's going here? What time am I being picked up at? What do I need to prepare still for next week? Where are your slides? Millions
Yes.
of thoughts running through my head. Um, but every so often, I would get these clear cut hits from my invisible VA slash intuition, that would literally drop things into my head where I was like, that was a hit. Holy shit.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And it was just stuff to do with work. I was working. It was like, oh, remember, you need to check that. Oh, this doesn't feel right. Actually, go and send an email to the travel agent. You need to double check that. So it was like, honestly, like my VA, a VA that was telling me and reminding me of things I needed to do in my workday.
I love that, and I so relate because more and more, and definitely in the last month, that has ramped up for me as well. And exactly what you said there, I do it. The amount of times I say thank you per day has increased astronomically because it is, and like it literally could be, oh, pick something up from the post office box. You're running out of milk. Like it literally could be the most ridiculous thing. But I'm so used to tuning into that voice now. I'm just like, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. And I know if I don't take action on it, it will drop in again. But yeah, if I wake up for
Mm.
breakfast and there's no milk, it's like, okay, well, that's on me. But I just love that. And, thinking about it when you have all of these things to coordinate and, so much that's expected of you, of all the things that you need from your spirit team and your intuition at that point in time, it is to be able to keep track of all the moving parts and to give you that kind of, it is like a VA or an EA who's sitting beside you, and we all know how invaluable they are. It's like they're really your right
Oh,
hand person. Yeah.
just to know that I could still trust that the intuition would work, even though I wasn't living in my full
Yes.
blown spiritual life, that, oh, this is going to still work. All of the guidance, the information, the program that I channeled last year,
Yeah.
where I got taught 6 steps to embed this intuitive nature into me, that's still there when I work hard. That
Yes.
that was a really big relief.
Yeah.
And then secondary to that, then there were also like the kind of like the more cute, fluffy spiritual stuff where, again, I wasn't operating in spiritual mindset, but when I walked onto the grounds of Angkor Wat, I got that
Oh.
little intuitive nudge. Remember to take your crystals. So, I'm like gathering the crystals. I even got my husband to bring his.
Yeah.
And, I was getting little bits of guidance like place your crystals on the stones. So I was walking around this beautiful, like however many 1,000-year-old structure and old city, putting my crystals in with the intention of soaking up the energy. I was
Yeah.
getting hits on like, take your shoes off now. And I was walking on the stones of
Oh.
Angkor Wat with
Oh,
bare feet
yes. Yes.
and
Oh gosh.
feeling that energy come into me. It was almost giving me like that second bit of steam, that bit of an like keep going. That's how
Yeah.
it felt for
Yeah.
me. So although I wasn't aware necessarily of like, how can I do spiritual practice today? I didn't even really meditate the entire time, but it was like
Yeah.
I just didn't need to. I was provided for,
Yeah,
which
but I guess if you compare it to say going to the gym every day, so going to the gym and you're building that muscle or that
mm,
cardiovascular capacity, the day you don't go to the gym doesn't mean it stops working. But if you haven't put in the effort up to that point, then you know what I mean. It's not going to serve you as well. So
great
all the
analogy, Diane.
groundwork of
Great analogy. I love
I
a
come
good
out with the
analogy.
odd one of them. That's just my mind trying to make sense of things. It's like, oh, it's kind of like this. And then if it's not like this, tell me. But I do feel like that just shows to people it's not just that, oh, you can go off and do these things and not meditate. It's like that's directly proportional to how much bloody work you've put in beforehand. Like, what have been your practices? Are you keeping this up every day? And I guess what I'm taking from it, especially, is if anyone listening does have a big event or something that's requiring them to go into that more, and it's almost like more masculine energy. It's
Yeah,
that
it
action
is.
oriented, whether it's corporate or entrepreneurial or whether it's hustle. That if you need to go into that mode of operation, ramp up on your spiritual practices just before you get to that point, just so you have that kind of brownie points that you can leverage then as you're going through it. I love
Mm.
that, Liz. I really do. And just the fact that, yeah, you didn't have to have another thing that you had to do every day, because that brings us down to another lower vibration as well. Every time we have to say that, we have to do this, we must do this. And that takes away I guess, the beauty and the honor of some of the spiritual practices that we
Mm.
that we have.
I do wonder, and I have to just cut in at this point, if
Mm,
I was going away to somewhere else for 2 weeks, sat in a conference room, listening to a speaker, and I wasn't really that interested or inspired or motivated from 2 weeks, I wonder how long that spiritual practice would have lasted. I feel like a lot of the reason why, when you embed spiritualism into your life, why you are still protected, why you still can get your intuition, is because you're operating from a place of inspiration. So for
yes.
me, the trips to Cambodia come from a soul calling. That's a
Yes.
deep, passionate a thing from somewhere else even.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because I was there and I was having continuous uplifting and inspiring experiences on a daily basis, it was continuing to keep my vibration high. How
Yes.
can you not get intuitive hits when your awareness is open and you're feeling really great?
Yeah, it's such an important point. And I know even in my own practice and encouraging people to tune into their inner compass, it's like if you're not going to do something, so if you do go off on that conference and it's not aligned with who you are or what you want to be doing, then that's going to drag your vibration down. So yes, your spiritual practices are probably going to go out the window. Your spiritual gifts are definitely going to go out the window. So the more things that you can do that are aligned with your soul purpose or your inner compass or your that passion and drive and following your gifts that you have for life, that is the stuff that makes your soul sing. And you were clearly on point, bringing those two worlds together. So what else do you mentioned that there were a couple of fluffy moments. I don't think that one was particularly fluffy. I think that was a really good one. What else? And can I ask a specific question here, because
Mhm.
you didn't just go with your husband, you also had the kids with you. And given
Holy
that,
shit, yes.
like, I know because like my mum, so, I had my, yes, former corporate and, good friend of Liz's view of the world, watching all of Liz's stuff unfold while she was overseas. But also Diane, the mum, was like, oh my gosh, she's got her two kids over there. She's trying to run all of these things. I am not joking you, Liz. I feel like I would have had a breakdown. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that lightly. I actually think the weight of responsibility of having my child there with me in the middle of all of this, but also the fact of like there's such a huge disparity looking at our own kids that we grow up in a place of privilege, with a great affluent lifestyle. We're very, very lucky. And then obviously you're called to Cambodia to work with disadvantaged children, many of whom you say are orphans. So even because, is that the first time your kids were away with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never ever allowed them to come before this.
So how did you, that moment of seeing your kids in that context of the, I guess that the heartbreaking reality of Cambodia?
Mm. So I'll just start by saying here, this was a really cool kind of circle or cycle event for me, because the first or the second time I went to Cambodia and the first time that I launched Project Gen Z, I had my daughter in my tummy. So not only was I running the trip for the very first time, but I found out I was
Oh,
pregnant a few months before
Liz.
going. So being in Cambodia for the first time and being with all of these kids, and it was really energetically full on for me being pregnant.
Yeah.
And I always had it in the back of my mind, the same with my husband Jesse, like we would love the kids to experience this. But at the same time, going year after year and knowing what it took from us or took out of us to
Yeah.
go through the experience of the energy it took, how hard it is to hold back tears when you're working with kids that have been rescued from child
Yeah.
prostitution, Diane, and begging circles, or they've seen their families being murdered. So you will be in that environment and emotionally it's rough.
Yeah. Holding yourself together. And
Oh,
then because you're bearing the weight of responsibility for holding the energy for everyone going through that,
yeah.
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
It's full on, and you can't just be in that environment crying in front of all the kids like
You can't
they're
do good in the
they're
world.
just
Yeah, yeah. You
that's
do need to
right.
emotionally process it in some way afterwards to release it.
That's
But in
it.
the moment, you're no good to nobody if you're a blubbering mess. Yeah.
And I think that's why always I held that energy, and then it
Yeah.
came out in this with the health issues, the bad back, etc., which by the way, I didn't have anything happen this year for the first time ever. Side
Oh,
note. Well, maybe we'll
why
come
do
back to
no?
that.
Well, no. Just as a moment, why do you think that was?
Because for the first time ever, I'd done spiritual practice. Think about it. All
Okay.
those years,
Yeah.
I think I was energetically open. And using an analogy, if you think of that ship that goes out to troll and throws its nets
Yeah.
out and basically trolls everything in around it, I think I've been living like that for years.
Yeah.
And when I had my spiritual awakening, I learned, wait a minute, geez, no wonder I'm always so emotional. I'm always feeling this way. Let me learn how to protect my energy. And I'd done that. This time, I just handled it all completely fine. I didn't even get one little iota of a bad back, which I was
That's phenomenal.
so surprised.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it just shows that, yeah, we're not even consciously aware of how much energy or emotions or things that we take in on a daily basis from, people around us and even the land. Like, I mean, trauma is held in the
Mm,
land, it's held in, generational trauma is held in people, all of those things. But your practices that you've been keeping up for so long all stood and served you when you were there.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
There's
that's so good.
there's a funny time as well because 2019 was the last trip that I did before COVID, and that time was the worst for me. I actually landed back into Australia, woke up the day after I'd been to Cambodia, and I don't know why, but my legs just stopped working. So I
Oh
went to get
shit.
out of bed and I collapsed, and for 2 days, from my knee below, were just had seized up and I couldn't walk. And if looking back now, I think over the years my spiritual gifts were opening
Yeah.
more and more and more.
Yeah.
That was right before my spiritual awakening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I
Gosh,
feel like
it's
this happens to everyone. You don't understand it because it's invisible, it's energy that
yeah.
you are picking up. All of those people that you're spending time with, their energy, their problems, the things they're talking about, the places you're hanging out.
Yeah.
If you're having a tough time, start by looking in the mirror and who am I spending time with and where am I?
Absolutely. And, for anyone who is a facilitator or a coach, or, when anyone who deals with, people on a daily basis, we all know, like, I know for me, when I facilitate a workshop for a day before awakening, and like, I still even then viewed things in terms of energetics. So I think I was good at doing it, just about managing my energy. But you still feel you are fatigued at the end of the day. You have given everything to everyone else. And I wouldn't have had the practices back then to clear my energy or to work through, or even to process through the emotions that I might have carried that day. So maybe someone did have a particularly horrific story, and while I don't take that on board, I will check in now to see, is there anything residual there that that I've kind of held on to and clear through that. So those spiritual practices definitely. And I'm just thinking, it's just coming to me about our episode, I can't remember what the number is, but don't fuck with my field. Go back and look at that one,
Yeah,
because
such
that
a
was
good
where we
episode.
spoke about a lot of these things as they were, becoming important practices for us. So let's go back to the kids and your experiences with the kids being in Cambodia with you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I really did go around the block on wondering whether it was a good idea to take the kids. It was one of those show me a sign if I should be taking them. My gut feeling was always really on point, like this is the year to take them. My son's 10,
Right.
daughter's 7. Um, shall I take them? Give me a sign. Give me another sign, a sign. And just all of the arrows were like, yes, the signpost, yes, yes, yes. So
Bring
um
your kids.
that's it. The bus driving past with the kids in Cambodia picture on the side. I got
Still
everything.
need a sign to your sign.
But there was very much that thing of, well, how the hell I'm in work mode here, and how can I care for the kids? So, there
Yeah.
were things that I put into play. I made sure that we had like a house mum from sunrise to help me with the kids and to ensure that they were going to be safe. We go
Yes.
out and about into the streets and do sales challenges. So I was like, safety needs to be number one. But again, just had this knowing, this inner knowing it would be okay.
Yeah.
The logical mind was operating in a place of, yes, my kids are extremely privileged. How will they act? There's, as I'm sure every parent does, you have this slight fear that they're going to come across as like really spoiled or
Yeah.
really privileged and say the wrong thing or act, in a certain way, which, my kids are amazing and I'd hoped that maybe that wouldn't show at all. But yeah, there was a lot of fear around that. And the other thing was I had decided to put my children into the workshops. And the workshops, as mentioned, are designed for older teenagers. So
Gosh,
I
so
was
it's
like,
not it's not
this is a
even the
risk.
life circumstance that's so vastly different, the language barrier, and
Yeah.
then on top of it, the age, like, because a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
wow.
Um, I had no expectations of them doing everything. I really preempted them and sat with them. And, when you're tired, you can do this. And
Yeah.
really tried to like tick all of the boxes to ensure they would be okay. But holy shit. I mean, did they just make us proud?
Oh God.
They gave absolutely every single thing to working with those kids. And I'd said to Cruz and Isla and my children, I said, when we drive into Sunrise on the bus, it can be a bit overwhelming, right? All of the kids run out, and suddenly you step off the bus and you've got all of these kids, these hands that are holding you and trying to get your attention and wanting this love. And they're all just so beautiful with these big smiley faces. And my daughter's very resilient, and I just felt like she was going to be fine. But I really had worry on my son because he's very highly sensitive. But
Yeah.
we landed at Sunrise, and I just remember looking at their faces, and they were just had these big smiles, and they were holding these hands, and within seconds they'd made these best buddies. And
Yes.
they couldn't communicate in terms of spoken English as such, but they found a way to communicate through love, honestly,
And that's kids. Kids
through
do
love.
that. They don't have the barriers that we do. They will find a sign. They will find a way of showing it. They just intuitively, there's almost like telepathy between kids that they
Mm,
just understand each other. That is
yeah.
so incredible.
And it just kind of spiraled. Like, my son is someone that outwardly comes across as very confident, but actually is not at all, especially in any type of like classroom or learning environment. And myself and my husband, at one point, we looked at each other because it was the first bit of the workshops, and we'd split all of the Cambodians into teams. So in every team, there was 3 Aussie coaches, and about 20 Cambodian kids. And then, we had our kids just mixed in there. And we'd
Yeah.
set them this huge challenge of come up with a battle chant, and you need to go. We've got 10 minutes to come up with, and you've got to perform it in front of everyone. And we were thinking, oh God, how is Cruz going to do with this? And then all of a sudden, we called in his team. We were, come in the blue team. And Cruz leads the full team in a haka,
No
completely on
way.
his own.
Oh,
And me and Jesse looked at each other from opposite sides of the room, like falling off our chairs. We're like,
oh,
is this our son?
yeah.
And that was like this incredible journey that we watched him go on over the 4 days of confidence and potential we've never seen ever before, never in a normal school
Oh,
environment. I don't even think that school has the potential to ever bring that out in him, honestly.
yes. Yeah.
Um,
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like in a room where everyone just gave him belief almost straight away and
Yeah.
accepted him for who he was.
Yes.
He just felt okay to just be himself and just to stand up and do what he needed to do. And we just saw him out there working hard, giving it all, making best friends. But there's this kind of one time, which I know I've shared with you already, didn't I?
We'll share it with the
Oh,
listeners if you're comfortable to do it.
I will. I'm not feeling overly emotional right now about it, but we'll see. But there was just this moment where all of the teams were out and they were in the middle of this 2.5 hour sales challenge. They all had market stands. They were all running around in their teams, selling their products. The goal was to make as much money as possible in that time. And Cruz was out there hustling with his friends, stopping people and bringing people back. And obviously, I was going everywhere in between all the teams, watching them, trying to judge them at this point. But there was this moment where I'd kind of thought, oh, I must go and check up on the kids. And one of the teachers from Sunrise came up to me and said, Liz, you should be so, so proud. And he told me this story that in the middle of the challenge, he'd watch Cruz go to his bag and pull out some money and then go to one of the local market stands and buy some food and then literally just walk around to all of the street children and handed out all of the food to them. And he didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
He just did it and then carried on. And
Yeah.
it was just, I just remember standing there and having this moment of like, oh shit, we're actually doing okay as parents here.
Yeah. Oh my God. More than okay. Oh, like that moment, like you think he saw a need. He took the initiative. It was like, what can I do? Here's something I can do. I don't need to make a song and dance about it. I don't need to ask anybody's permission for it. I'm just going to do what feels right in this moment. And the fact that it was relayed to you by someone else is just even so beautiful as well. It's like you didn't stumble upon it. And, sometimes when we observe things, our kids catch us watching, and it's like it changes the whole trajectory of what they're doing. But to hear that back and think, wow, all of those, looking for the sign near sign, should I bring my kids, should I not? It's like there in that moment, just thinking. And I know when you told me this story, like I could just see Cruz's life, like the trajectory and the path of his life and the impact he's going to have on the world, just bang, 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 was flashing in front of my eyes. And to
Yeah.
your point about school, like you think about traditional schooling and how much we're, oh gosh, I just feel for the kids who, that it's so difficult. They're trying to get the round peg in the square hole. And that what you saw in Cruz is available to every child. Like,
Mm.
they just need to be put in the right circumstances. They need to be given some belief in them and an opportunity to step up and for them to do it in their own way. And like, what a gift to be able to do that.
I have to say, and be really honest though, that I just reflect on before that point and before what I saw of both of my children at that time.
Yeah.
And I wonder as a parent if I subconsciously have even put those limitations there. I feel like, well, honestly, that potential that I saw then, that it just blew my mind. Like me and Jesse have both,
Yeah.
we just talk about it. We're just like, we just cannot believe
Yeah.
that that's there, that is there. And that helps me sleep at night, not necessarily worry as much now about the future.
Oh, it's such a huge gift, I think, sharing this with people, because we are all a product of the generations before us. Like every one of us, like we don't want to put limitations on our kids, but we're so programmed, so conditioned in so many ways. And no matter
Mm,
how much work we do, no matter how much, coaching, healing, therapy, whatever you want to call it, like we still come with our stuff that we, pass on to our kids. So, give ourselves grace for not beating ourselves up too much about it. But you've been
yeah,
gifted this moment now where it's like, wow, I see what's possible. So yes, your ability to, the next time Cruz asks to do something that's a bit out there, and you're going to be like, okay, go for it, mate. Off you go. Yeah.
absolutely.
I have your
Yeah,
back. I
absolutely.
have your back. And that's,
Perspective.
how beautiful is that? How awesome is that? That's, to witness that. And yeah, again, we don't get the chance to see those things in the day to day structure of school as it is now, and even structured sports or structured, learning instruments, things like that. Everything is so structured. There isn't that opportunity to be fluid or to play to the dynamics of that best suit each child. So seeing that, like, I mean, hopefully whoever's listening, and anybody, whether you have kids yourself or there's kids in your life, nieces and nephews, or you work with children, just having a look to see, yeah, what are some of the things that if I just backed them a little more, if I cleared the way for them to, see what their preferences are or their style, rather than, because, yeah, I'm just kind of laughing to myself because I had a hell of a night last night trying to get my daughter through an assessment that was due this morning. And it was all that
Oh,
11th hour stuff that needs to be done. And I could see myself, I could hear myself, the conditioning of, you got to get your homework done. And and then I shifted gears on how I was approaching with it. And this went on for a couple of hours trying to get through this because she really wanted to do it. And by the end of it, she was going to bed singing Happy as Larry. There was a knock-on impact
ah,
for me because there were
yeah.
certain things that I needed to get done that, okay, that had to go by the wayside. But that's fine. There was such a teachable moment, because when I sat down to her at the end of it and I said, so what did you learn from that? Not the homework itself, like not the assessment that she was doing. What did you learn about yourself as we went through that? And oh my God, like she's 14 now, just last week. And it's like she rattled off, the self-awareness was just through the roof. And I'm thinking, okay, well, my work here is done. I just need to back off and let her do
Great
things
job,
that are,
mum.
yeah, but it was finding a way that I know things about her, she knows things about herself, and how do we kind of do that dance to bring out the best in her so she can get things done in the least stressful ways possible. But
Mm,
yeah, so I think a collective clap on the back to all parents and all, people who work with kids in any way right now. It's like, if you're doing this in any way, you're doing a good job. You absolutely are. And just look for those opportunities to just, yeah, cheer them on, or see the potential that's in them that they're trying to achieve. Like, I love that, Liz. I just like that. My
That's
heart
cool.
is singing after hearing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole trip was kind of lots of like mini lessons and epiphanies. And I even got this message this morning as I sat down to kind of reflect and prepare for this, like on the whole thing, from the minute of deciding to even attempt to do this trip again, to like coming back and having all of those incredible things happen, mystical and non-mystical.
Yeah,
It was just this lesson around, you really can live a human existence, doing the human stuff, going to work,
yes,
making yourself a living, and still come at it with that mindset of and that dose of spirituality. Like, it can be done. It's not
yeah,
all in on one side and all in not in the other. Like, I think it is around finding that balance and that way to kind of operate with both, because that way you can still achieve your goals in life. You can still feel like
absolutely.
you're moving forward. And I think maybe working in that middle ground is really how we tick off the lessons and we gain the wisdom that we need before we move on, to the next life.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think what you have just said there really epitomizes the core of why spiritual as fuck exists. It's
Absolutely.
like at the end of the day, each individual who listens to this podcast, whether you listen to it or not, it's like every person needs to figure out their whole blend of, well, what does it mean to be, more, even if you call it heart centered, soul centered, that you're leading your life of what your soul intended, and you're actually bringing that to life in the 3D world. Because if we're all,
Mm,
doing that, trying to be more spiritual and trying to, like, I mean, only so many of us can be the Buddhist monk up on the hill. If we
that'd
all
be
do
way
that,
too hard, wouldn't it?
like, seriously, like, where's the variety in life then? I'm sorry. I'm happy to be a person who is an emotional roller coaster, who experiences the highs and lows of life. Like, I'm never going to give that away. So, I don't want to be that ultimate healed person, which doesn't exist. It's
Mm,
just enjoying the experience, and then seeing, well, what are my 3D and my 5D gifts? What are my masculine energy and my feminine energy? What is my corporate or hustle or entrepreneurial things, getting shit done, versus doing that in a very conscious, soul-led, heart-led way, that's coming from a place of intuition, coming from a place of intention. Where the pendulum will swing or balance on all of that is different for each one of us. But the best thing is, it's unique for each one of us. And that's what we need. If we can all spend more of our time allowing each other the grace to be able to get to that point and to operate in that way, that is where the gold is for humanity. That is what is going to actually propel humanity forward, if we can get to that point. So, yeah, we all don't need to
mm.
be, the Buddhist monk on the hill. We all don't need to be the walking around in, sandals and linens and loads of crystals. It's like, go out into the real world, do a real bloody job, roll up your sleeves, and bring as much spirituality, intention, and consciousness to that as you can to bear, with all of your gifts in an unapologetic way.
Mm. I just feel like I'm being honestly given so many messages as you speak there, Diane. My clairvoyant
Okay,
mind
okay.
is off the charts
Can
right now.
can you share any of that with us?
Um,
Or, because I
yes.
understand, I understand that some of it just needs processing, and some of it's for you, and some of it may be for others. But if there's anything you can share, please
Okay,
do.
yeah, I'm going to start off with a story. So I got shown an actual memory of my life. And I remember I was going through this point of reading loads of spiritual books, feeling connected to angels, rah, rah, rah. And I was starting my first proper company, which was the real hustle one. And
Yes.
I just felt like I was kind of almost shouting out to the universe, help, how can I do this? How can I bring in the spirituality into the business? And I remember phoning my friend up and saying, can you come to the Mind Body Spirit Festival? I need to go and find a book to help me basically bring in spirituality into business.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh, and
went
that's so long ago
a
now.
long time ago. I specifically went to that festival that day and went to every single book stand to search for a book based on how I can still run a business and have a spiritual mind. And I couldn't find anything.
So you
And
left empty-handed?
I left empty-handed, and for a few weeks afterwards continued to have a look around in bookshops, all that type of stuff. To be honest, it wasn't like really big thing to be going and searching on the internet at that point that I
Yeah, yeah.
remember. Um, but unfortunately, I never found what I was looking for. So what happened was, as I built the business, as I became more successful, I got busier, it just faded
Yeah,
away. And
yeah.
then I had this huge chunk of time where my senses were disconnected, where I was only operating from that mode. So as you were speaking, I was shown this memory. I was shown the Mind Body Spirit Festival. And I want to ask all of our listeners right now, do you find it hard to be operating as a teacher, as a nurse, working for government, going to work at the telecommunications company, whatever you do? Do you find it hard to operate with spiritual? Are you embarrassed to tell your workmates, that crazy story that just happened on the tram on the way to work? Do you openly discuss meditation or those dreams that you had last night? Do you tell people if you go to a tarot reader? I just feel like we're at a point in time right now, and I know that's why the Spiritual as Fuck podcast
Yeah.
exists, that we have to be the guide to help people take the woo woo, the spiritual
Yes.
shit. Like you said, you don't have to be hippie carrying crystals, not wearing no shoes to operate with a spiritual mindset. And the Mind Body Spirit Festival for me is an example of a festival or a spiritual event that doesn't do it for me.
Yes, same.
I'm just going to say it. All
Same.
right. I don't mean no offense, but it doesn't do it for me. And I feel like the Spiritual as Fuck podcast, brand, movement, tribe are being called to invent and launch a brand new event that's never been done before in the world. And
100%. And we know, like for us, this has been on our, not just our vision board, taking active steps towards this. And it is, whether it's the festivals and things that are too commercial, which I feel the Mind Body Spirit one is just okay, doesn't do it for me, or other festivals that are out there that are maybe a little bit too woo woo. But if you are someone who has your, let's just say, 1 foot planted in reality and 1 foot planted in the spiritual realm, it's like, how do you integrate the two of those without losing yourself that you're going too far one way or the other? Like, if I take even a wardrobe moment, it's like, if you're going to something and you feel you need to dress in a different way than you normally would just to fit in at that event, and it's like, that's probably, it's like, if you're going somewhere, then it's like, I can just wear whatever the fuck I want and I'm fine. That's being true to yourself. That's being authentic. It's kind of like, come all ye to these events. But yeah, I love that you got reinforcement for that, Liz.
absolute reinforcement. It's an event where spirituality meets the real world. And if you're listening to this right now and this is resonating and you would love to be able to go to an event with real people that are actually just sharing their spiritual stories, and they're running businesses or they're working as a nurse or whatever, you have to reach out to let us know, because after this recording, we might get a little bit scared and go, oh shit, we should have spoken about that. So we
That
actually
does
need all of
happen.
you.
It does. Yeah,
Because
everybody has those moments where it's like, oh, that sounded like a really good time. And it is like, there's a Marianne Williamson quote about, just that, the biggest expression of yourself, and we shy away from it. It's like, who are we not to be? Like, who are you not to be these things? And even if what Liz is saying, reflect that back in your own life as well. Is there something that you keep having these moments of, here's something big and hairy that I want to do, and it's really audacious and I want to go out into the world? It's like, what's stopping you? Go out
yeah,
and do it
why
as
not?
well. Yeah.
Why not? I think it's really time. And wrapping up the whole story of Cambodia, I get perspective. I
Yes.
watch these kids go and chase their dreams, coming from nothing. So
Yeah.
it makes me question every single time, but what am I doing in my life? I have the privilege. I have a beautiful house. I have opportunities because I live in a country that has millions of them around me. Am
Yeah.
I wasting my days, or am I actually committing to something that's going to go out and make a difference? And I'd love to leave everyone with that, because you can be a conscious go-getter on a mission to change the
Yeah.
world with a spiritual mindset.
Oh, I'm fucking lit up with goosebumps right now because I am so privileged to be working with you on this spiritual as fuck journey. So,
Oh,
yeah,
stop, Diane.
I mean it. It is like for me and for the listeners, for you to know as well. There's so much that was revealed in this podcast that I did not know. There is so much that was revealed in the last few weeks during Liz's trip in Cambodia that I literally, that's why we're having this podcast. I didn't realize, and I wanted to bring that to all of you, knowing that there would be so much gold, so much inspiration, so much food for thought that would come out of this that would benefit people. So, we say it every time. Please share any insights, any learnings, any aha moments, any of your own stories. We just love this shit. Like we absolutely, it lights us up to get those stories and messages from people. So please keep them coming in, because a podcast is a very one-way event. That's why we have our channel events, that we get people in and work with us. But now, Liz has set the bar for us. It's like those spiritual as fuck events. When they come, it's like we want to know that we've got people that we're collaborating with, that we're co-creating with, that we are, that we're all doing this together, that we're having this ripple effect out onto humanity. So on that note, folks, stay spiritual as fuck. That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.